Hey everybody, it's Trags, and it's Wednesday, March 27th, time for episode 291 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network. Find us at clnsmedia.com, and of course follow us, as always, on Twitter at Patriots CLNS. Want to welcome Brian Phillips of SB Nation and chief editor of patspulpit.com. Great stuff. You read him there all the time and read patspulpit.com all the time, not only during the Patriots season, but certainly during what has been, again, another active offseason. He's the editor, senior writer. He does video at Pat's Pulpit. And one reason I'd really look forward to having him on today is he's an expert on the NFL salary cap and contracts. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, Trags. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
So let's begin with the huge news that broke on Sunday night. Rob Gronkowski announcing his retirement after 9 NFL seasons that I think everybody agrees will land him in Canton one day. That move saves the Patriots $9.8 million in cap space. Here's my quick and dirty take on it.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that it came after the start of free agency, but it at least allows the Patriots to plan for taking a tight end in the draft in the first round, which is maybe an assumption a lot of people are making. The Patriots have certainly broken that line of thinking in years past, but Irv Smith seems to be a guy that might be in line for the Patriots to take a close, hard look at out of Alabama.
Yeah, I'm still just kind of getting over, the end of it's an end of an era with Gronk being gone. It's going to be really weird, coming in as we go into training camp and everything. But, I really think that I don't know how much it really impacted their strategy if he would have retired directly after the Super Bowl. Really, with the tight end free agency class, you had your Jesse Jameses, your Tyler Crofts, CJ Uzomah from Cincinnati re-signed with the Bengals, and really the numbers that those guys got out on the open market, you're looking at anywhere between 5.6 and 6.25 million. For guys like Jesse James, Tyler Croft, I really feel like that would have been out of the Patriots price range. We saw that Jared Cook's deal, some
Saints.
of the numbers, with the Saints today, some of those numbers came out, and it's looking like 7.5 APY, but with about $8 million guaranteed in the first year. His cap hit will probably be like around $4 or $5 million. But I really think with this draft class, how amazing this tight end class is, and I know your colleague Evan Lazar has been detailing it a ton.
He has.
Yeah, guys like Irv Smith. Obviously, if a TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant somehow, if they find their way into the 20s and the Patriots can move up, shame on the rest of the NFL for letting it happen. But Irv Smith and guys like Jay Sternberger from Texas A&M, these guys are all really, really good weapons. And, we even saw them go out and get a guy like Matt Lacoste and add to the depth. So they'll have the depth guys. And then, I definitely expect them to go get one of these playmakers.
Yeah. And I've always, been of the belief, Brian, that the Patriots find a way, whether it's through a draft or free agency or signing a veteran after the fact, which they've been doing a lot of here in the offseason. They've been kind of signing those second-tier veterans or trading for second-tier veterans to fill roster spots.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, when I look at and I analyze how the Patriots have handled their salary cap situation over the last, say going back just as long as I've been tracking it personally since 2015, but back until basically the start of the CBA, the way that they have been attacking their salary cap sheet is to stock the low middle class of their roster, guys making 1 to 3% of the league salary cap or their adjusted team cap. And they lead the league every year, just about every year, in these 1 to 2.5% deals. And whether it be rookies, obviously to get that high of a number this year, it would be like around 1.8, 1.9 million for a cap hit. So your first rounders will all be those kind of deals, but they go after, they put a ton of stock into those special teams, those core special teamers, guys like Brandon King, Matt Slater, Brandon Bolden. Those guys are all of these in this tier that we're talking about here.
Right.
And whether it be veterans, rookies, street free agents, trading, I mean, there's no team that utilizes every method of roster building better than the Patriots do. Practice squad promotion, practice squad poaching, the draft, trades, restricted free agency. It's wild to watch them do it. But, that's how they plug all these holes and keep their depth restocked.
Well, here's what I don't understand. And you follow this intimately, Brian, speaking with Brian Phillips of patspulpit.com and SB Nation. Why don't other teams follow the Patriots formula of cutting or following what other teams are cutting and picking them up for 1 and 2 year deals and signing them on the cheap and getting the compensatory draft picks? I don't understand why the Patriots have laid out this roadmap for the last 4 to 5 years. We're being conservative here. The last 4 or 5 years they've been doing this, and other teams just don't seem to be willing to go down that same path.
You know what? I posed this question to Twitter the other day. Maybe it might have been about a month ago. And I asked, is it a matter of ego around the league where teams just feel that they can do it better? I mean, when you're literally being shown the blueprint every single year about how it's done, why not do exactly, if the league is such a copycat league, like we talk about, like we hear all the time, you're right. Like, why don't teams do this? And I think other factors come into play when you're talking about, there's just, ownership doesn't have a lot of patience with a lot of other organizations. Coaches are on a 3-year, it's a 2-year wait and see type of deal. And, there's quick triggers. You have GMs and coaches not being hired in together at the same time. So nobody's schedule is lined up. Nobody's, 5-year plan is lined up with their coach that they're bringing in. And there's just all this instability and organizations just don't give their front office guys time to build and sustain a long-term deal. I mean, it's not like Bill Belichick is the only, really solid head coach in the league. We're talking about the 32 most coveted coaching positions in the sport, right? Like,
right.
Of the entire population. Like,
and he would admit that. Not to cut you off, but Bill would admit that. Like, I mean, he's very proud of his accomplishments, not only on the field, but throughout the organization to allow the team to build the roster like they have. I mean, he is the first to tell you, I don't build the roster by myself. I mean, I have Nick Caserio. I have a great scouting department that helped me build the roster through free agency, veteran pickups, trades, and the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really cool is interesting, and we always hear about it, is Bill's Bill and Nick Caserio and this whole front office staff, is their ability to go against the grain. We know how involved they are with analytics. We've heard it, them being one of the first teams to really get into it and use it to some degree. To what degree, we don't really know, but and then we see them consistently going against what the analytics community is saying. So they're taking running backs in the first round last year, and they're going with a heavy run game and running the ball like crazy when everybody is moving towards this pass happy offense now. And the Patriots they're just carving out their own path. And it's so cool to watch Bill construct the roster around that. And this offseason, I think, is pivotal, just in the trenches. The offensive line obviously is shored up, but that defensive interior, I think, with Trey Flowers leaving and Shelton and Brown, all them being gone, it's interesting to see the moves that they're making to shore up the trenches now.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, I'm still a little bit concerned about Trey Flowers leaving. Yes, they went out and acquired Michael Bennett, and that was a terrific move. But, you've lost Trey Flowers and Adrian Claiborne, who is pretty much a one-trick, one down specialty
sure.
pony. And I think they realized that. That's why they released him and took a $2 million dead cap hit. But in replacing him with Michael Bennett, they've got to do other things to shore up that defensive line, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the Claiborne one was because the Trey Flowers was the one that, I had pegged all season. There's just no way they're going to be able to meet the number. And it ended up being, 17 plus million a year. And it just wasn't going to be a place that New England was going to go.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
You say there's no way there would be a way if they wanted to really juggle around the roster and make a couple of other cuts, couldn't they? I mean,
you certainly could. They could do it however they wanted. His cap hit this year in Detroit's only $6 million. It's 6 and change. Obviously that escalates pretty quickly starting in 2020.
Sure.
But so it was absolutely possible, but it's really, it's their philosophy of roster building. You know, it's we have to maintain the ability to add this lower mid tier. These guys making $1.5 to $2.5 to $3 million a year cap hit wise, because that's how you build depth. And we saw it last year. The key last year, this wasn't the most talented Patriots team. This was the healthiest, deepest Patriots team. At least when you look at their front seven, their offensive line, I mean, everybody was extremely healthy and they got lucky in that sense, but they had depth all over the place. And on defense, they could constantly rotate guys in and out. You know, we had a guy like Adrian Claiborne he led the league in pressure rate. He had one job the whole year. He played, under 40% of the snaps, and his job was to rush the passer. And he didn't have any other responsibilities because they had this depth built into the roster. And when you have a guy that's earning 9, 10, 11, 12, upwards of 15% of the league cap, you lose the ability to have those depth guys back there on the bottom end of the roster.
So after tight end, and we're working on I think a fairly large assumption that they are actually going to go with a tight end in the first round. Where do they look to fill next? Do they look to get some offensive line depth? Do they look at drafting Tom Brady's eventual successor, which I think would be there probably, especially if they went after Greer from West Virginia in the second or third round. Is that a possibility?
Well, for me, that's certainly a possibility. I think, especially when it comes to the first round with Bill Belichick, I feel like, I feel like there's a chance he could even just ignore the tight end position altogether and then just roll with what he has, and then, find a guy in week 4 off of a practice squad in, Seattle or something, and all of a sudden he's the next guy. Like, we never know where the next big move's coming from, and what they're looking to do. But I think, obviously tight end is priority number 1 when you look at holes in the roster. But for me, interior defensive line is a huge priority, and they need to get younger and they need to get deeper on the interior. They got Mike Pennell, obviously, but I think with this crop of young defensive tackles, you can get a guy like a Dexter Lawrence, or I'm not sure if Christian Wilkins will be there, but there are guys throughout the first 2 days of this draft that really fit the mold in New England. A guy like Jerry Tillery, Notre Dame, is really in that same mold as Trey Flowers. And Michael Bennett, that big kind of that early down, he's outside, on third downs he kicks inside type of guy. That's where I would go personally, but I could see them going, like you said, a million different directions.
There are questions about Dexter Lawrence, though, right? I mean, he did not have, if I was reading correctly, a terrific combine and a terrific workout.
That's true. Then that just makes you wonder how, if, where the value, when with the Patriots, all these picks up in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and their ability to move up when a guy starts sliding, you just wonder if they see a value there with Dexter Lawrence at, let's say they can pass on him at 32, if that's even a possibility. They pass on him at 32, and next thing you know, he's there at 40, and they've got, 56, I think it is, in the second round, that they can move up and package a couple, and that's just too good of a value for them. It's all a value game for how he falls in their grading system. You never know. Personally, I'm more of a Christian Wilkins guy. I'm not a huge Dexter Lawrence fan. I've seen a couple of mocks and a couple of guys talk about how he fits in New England's system. And there are guys all over this draft that I think they can address that interior defensive line issue moving forward too. So they're in good shape.
They are, and I mean the Patriots, of course, are going to be in good shape because they always have Plan B, C, and D behind Plan A if it falls through. I want to talk about the wide receiver position, and because with Gronk retiring, as we've said a couple times now, the assumption is that they would go after a tight end, a premier first round talent type of tight end to replace Gronk. But what about the wide receiver position? That is a position that's taken a hit with the loss of somebody like obviously Cordero Patterson, and Chris Hogan is out the door. they need depth at the wide receiver position. And yes, they re-signed Philip Dorsett, but they need more behind that, don't you think? And Braxton Berrios comes back from injury this year.
Right. Yep. I'm not as concerned as I see some out there are. I understand the concern. It's the same concern we had last year with Chris Hogan, especially after the Edelman suspension was talked about. And for me, the jury was still out on guys like Cordero Patterson and Philip Dorsett. But the job that Chad O'Shea did last year with those two was insane to me. I did not see
Good
Cordero
point.
Patterson. Yeah, exactly. I didn't see Cordero Patterson doing that well in this Patriots system, and the way they used him in a myriad of different ways was unbelievable. Obviously, Chad O'Shea's gone. Philip Dorsett really did show that he was taking that next step last year for me, and I was ringing the bell to have him play over Chris Hogan all year. I surprised people was going to be Bruce Ellington. I think he's going to make the roster. I think he's the exact kind of guy that can excel in this system, and I do think they go and get a weapon in the draft. And the next thing you know, we don't know what's going on with the Josh Gordon situation, but then you're rolling out. You're at the point where you're rolling out Edelman, Dorsett, hopefully a top 100 pick rookie, hopefully somewhere in that range. A guy like Kelvin Harmon from NC State, or a Deebo Samuel from South Carolina, and Philip Dorsett, and now you're kind of cooking with gas with this running game and this offensive line, and it seems right now as we speak in March like more than enough. But obviously, anything you get on top of that from Josh Gordon would be the cherry on top.
You a believer in Isaiah Wynn at the left tackle position, replacing Trent Brown?
150%. Like this, I was ringing the bell for Isaiah Wynn to start at left tackle last year before the injury. Before we went into camp and saw that Trent Brown was taking getting the first, from day one, it seemed like he walked right in and took that left tackle spot. Dante Scarnecchia, that's got Dante Scarnecchia written all over it. If he says he's a left tackle, he's a left tackle.
I buy that.
Yeah. If Dante says it, hey, let's just go with it, right?
Well, and the other thing Dante has mentioned before, and he told a couple of people this last week. I was at the Boston College Pro Day, and he was looking at Chris Lindstrom, of course, and Anthony Montero, the tackle prospect out of Boston College, and he said, look, if they can move their feet and they can keep their balance and keep their knees together when they do their squats, I can make them anything that they want to be. And I that's oversimplifying it, right? But it's
sure.
kind of how Dante Scarnecchia feels about offensive line coaching. If they have the physical skills and the flexibility, the pliability, if you will, to be slender in position in their slot, then he can coach them up any which way. He wants linemen who are versatile and who are light on their feet and can move. And that's the one thing I think people were a little bit pleasantly surprised by Trent Brown. And Belichick noted this a couple of times during the season, that Trent Brown was actually very athletic for being 6'7", 330 pounds.
Oh, it's insanely, like pound for pound might have been the best athlete on the team, right? If you like just strictly pound for pound basis, like insanely athletic for that size.
I agree. And I guess where I'm going with this, Scarnecchia saw Montero and he saw Lindstrom. Any chance that one of those two land in New England?
I mean, certainly. I know a big name that we're seeing a ton with right now is Max Sharping out of I believe it's Northern Illinois, is a guy who's fitting all these athletic profiles that everybody's talking about. But they like the local kids, and we saw it with Max Rich out of Harvard, I believe it was, a couple training camps ago. They like the local kids, and this seems like it would be the most like Bill Belichick move ever to draft a guy, an interior offensive lineman like Lindstrom in like the second or third round, who projects to be one of the better linemen in the entire draft, and at a position that doesn't appear to be a need right now. Maybe potentially a Joe Thuney replacement down the line. Joe Thuney's in line for quite a payday, in my opinion, coming up here if they don't get an extension done this year. It would infuriate Patriots fans. It would be like the one pick Patriots fans would be scratching their head at, but it would be.
Of course it would.
but it would be like so Belichick to do it. I mean, Lindstrom would be an absolute machine in this offense.
I would not rule that out whatsoever. Look, and I said this last week talking with John Meter-Perel. I've said it before, two other guests I've had on in the last couple of weeks. Said it to my colleague Evan Lazar. Belichick goes with Brian? The best athlete,
best guy,
on the board,
the best guy available,
not
exactly.
the need.
Yeah, we've seen it time in and time out, right? I mean, last year with Isaiah Wynn, it wasn't the exact immediate need right off the bat, especially when at the time they didn't have the Trent Brown. They didn't have Trent Brown in the pipeline yet. Obviously, that was about 24 hours later Trent Brown came in. But their running back spot was looking fine. Even though Dion Lewis left, they didn't do that. They went and they stuck with their guns and they went best player available down the line. And sometimes, and I feel like we'll probably see it again this year, best player available is trade back when you got a chance to get value and accumulate later picks, or pro personnel, bringing in. And I think if we don't see them take a tight end early, I think that's what we'll end up seeing from them. Maybe getting one on the trade market, a guy like Nick Vannett from Seattle, if he would be available, it would be a perfect fit. A guy like Garrett Selleck from San Francisco, obviously the trade pipeline there is still open. You'd anticipate, but that's where I would see. But yeah, you're right. Best player available, and whatever is the most valuable pick at that position. That's what they're going to do. That's their system.
What did you think of Bill's breakfast with Bill on Wednesday morning, or Tuesday morning, I should say, down in out in Arizona? Just classic Bill.
Right, because I think you retweeted the Jeff Howe tweet. Right?
I did indeed.
We got the analytics on the breakfast with Bill. 15. What is it? 2.7 questions were asked per minute with a certain
let me bring this up.
Rate.
Let's see if I can find this. I'm sure I can. This is a great podcasting. Let's see. Okay, per Jeff Howe's tweet, Bill Belichick fielded 116 questions over 43 minutes on Tuesday morning. That's 2.7 questions per minute. He said 1,790 words, an average of 15.4 per response, and his most frequent phrases were "we'll see," 21 times, and "I don't know," 13 times. He did, by the way, throw in there, Brian, "it's only March."
Yeah, that was the big one that I saw, and everybody was kind of quote tweeting it with "it's March," it's like the March Madness phrase, the advertising catchphrase. Yeah, I mean, a little more mum this year than he typically is, right? He's typically a tad bit more jovial and a little more expressive, right? Talking about getting into the swing of things, and I know he likes kind of going on a little bit about the process of how busy he is right now and everything. But this year it seemed like, just kind of zipped up and, obviously.
You know what? I think it depends on the year, and you never can really figure out Bill, in terms of the mood he comes into these press conferences in, whether it's during the season, during a Wednesday typical press conference or a Friday press conference during the season, or one of these meetings in March where, these reporters kind of come up to him and are expecting the jovial Bill, because you expect him to be more relaxed because it's March, and he gives you the kind of the business-like approach that he did on Tuesday.
Right. Maybe it depends on just how many storylines, big, the anticipation of questions, obviously with Gronk retiring and everything, that he saw that coming, and he talked just really briefly on that, and then it was pretty much zipped up from the rest of the way, it seemed like.
Well, and the other thing, he usually gets zipped up if there's some type of calamity around the team. And obviously, I hate bringing this up, but it's got to be brought up. Robert Kraft pleading not guilty to the 2 counts of misdemeanor solicitation for prostitution. What do you think of the way that the organizations handle it? Best way possible that they've handled it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical of what we'd expect from them, right? Nothing out of the ordinary. This is just another in a long line of the scandals, and they've dealt with all these huge, massive stories before, and on the incident at hand, it'll play out how it plays out. it's an unfortunate situation for a lot of people involved. I tend to think of more of what the investigators and everybody were doing there in the first place. And it's a terrible situation, but it'll be, it's not going to be a distraction in the locker room. That's what they're going to make sure of. We'll make a bigger deal out of what's going on outside the locker room. But, this team has shown that they can keep everything kind of at an arm's length and not let it kind of steer their focus. We've seen that before. So it's an unfortunate situation,
Yeah, and I think they've dealt with it probably the best way that they possibly could. And, I'm not surprised that they stick to their guns and kind of close the doors around them, if you will, and make sure that, nothing penetrates the walls. There's no noise that gets inside that affects their decision making.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way they've always been.
Exactly. I mean, it is crazy that when you talk about all the storylines over the years, from Spygate to Deflategate and Aaron Hernandez, and I mean, just these massive stories that go well beyond the scope of sports, and the whole nation seems to grip themselves with, and it becomes bigger than sports. You've got bigger media coming in. You've got media around that aren't even sports media. You've got, news, it's a breaking news story. It's on every TV network. And, so they're quite used to batting down the hatches.
Right. And the other thing is, if they can handle Aaron Hernandez, and I know this is a disgusting story that Robert Kraft is enduring right now, brought on by himself, I think he would even admit that. He apologized for it. But if they can handle Aaron Hernandez, pretty much they can handle anything. That's the way I feel. What about what you're going to be doing, you and SB Nation and your colleagues? What are you going to be doing at patspulpit.com and getting Patriots fans geared up for April 25th through the 27th in Nashville?
Well, yeah, we've got a ton of content all week, in the weeks leading up. I'm doing Pat's Pulpit Live on our Facebook page. If anybody listening wants to go ahead and like us on Facebook, Pat's Pulpit, once a week. And then during draft week, obviously we'll be talking, we'll be on there a couple different times. We got some great draft guys. Ryan Kieran is one of our draft guys, pumping out content, really good evaluator. I dabble in it a little bit, but really I like to stick to my guns with the contract and the roster building stuff. But I love the work that you guys are doing over there. You and Evan and Alex and everybody with getting everybody prepped for the draft. We're pretty lucky in the Patriots media community. We got a lot of good resources.
I appreciate you saying that, Brian. And I think a great franchise and an extraordinary team like the Patriots kind of deserves the coverage that they get, and I think there is a ton of great coverage out there, and certainly you are part of it. I want to thank everybody for downloading today's podcast. I want to thank our terrific guest, Brian Phillips of SB Nation and patspulpit.com. You can follow him on Twitter, and Brian, make sure I have this right, at B Phillips. That's BPHILL, 2 L's, IPS_SB. Is that correct?
That's the one. That's me. Yep.
Excellent. For producer Michael Angi and the founder of the network, Nick Gelso, this is Mike Petralia, and this has been the Patriots Beat podcast, powered by CLNS Media.
Hello, I'm Dan Lothian, host of the Behind the Media podcast on the CLNS Media Network. Along with Jimmy Young, we dive into the biggest media headlines each week with honest, informed, and sometimes irreverent perspectives. It's not all serious. We deliver information and entertainment. As we like to say on Behind the Media, we find the interesting in media so you don't have to go searching for it. Listen to our podcast and get prepped for the next trip to the water cooler. Subscribe to Behind the Media wherever you get your podcast, or find us on www.clnsmedia.com.